a picture for you guys that I sometimes draw for my patients. So you guys can see this. I don't know how focused it is. Maybe I need a marker. Anyway, I'm gonna make a little X here. So if you were in my office and you were thinking about having sex, or if you'd already had sex, I would say this is you. So I ask people this all the time. How many sexual partners have you had? So it's not uncommon for somebody, maybe by the time they graduate from high school, you might say, oh, well, I've had 3 sexual partners. You know, 2 that were long-term boyfriends, 1 I'm not really proud of, but you know, that's my life. So this is you. This is again, I keep using girls for example, because that's what I'm used to talking to. But so if this is a girl and this is the 3 guys that she's had sex with, this is you. This is the 3 people you have sex with, you know, before you're 20 or whatever. Okay, so you might think that's not a super promiscuous person. Had a couple of long-term boyfriends, and then this thing that happened at a party that she's kind of embarrassed about, but there we go. So 3 partners, right? That's your risk. Well, the problem is the first boyfriend she had, he had just had 1 girlfriend before her. Okay, so there's that partner. But then his old girlfriend, she was kind of promiscuous. So before she was with him, she'd had 5 other partners. Okay, all right. So then this was her first time. Second boyfriend, they'd been dating for a while. She'd already had sex, so it wasn't quite as big of a deal to have sex again with this guy because she kind of liked him more than she had liked that guy anyway. So she had sex with him. This guy, well, he'd had just a couple of partners before her. He'd had about 3 partners. And one of them was his first partner. I mean, she was his first partner. I'm sorry, he was her first partner. I'm losing track of the he's and she's. You know, they were each other's first partner, so there's no other exposures. But then his second partner, she'd had a couple before him. And this one, again, this was kind of at a party and somebody that just sort of had a lot of partners. So she had like 6 partners before him. Okay. So that's her 2 regular boyfriends, long-term relationships, 2 pretty steady partners. That's a pretty reasonable thing, right? And then now she's already at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 people that she's been exposed to from these 2 like long-term boyfriend partners. Then, not to mention, maybe her first week at college or something, there's a party and there's somebody and they get too drunk and they're not really thinking about what's going on and she has sex with him. Well, come to find out, he's had like 5, maybe 7 partners before her, and each of them had about 3 partners. So now she's up to like 50 people that she's been exposed to.
What do you mean by exposed to? Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah. So when you say you've had 3 partners, what this girl here has really had is she's had about 55 different people whose infections that they have had could be passed on to her.
Even though she didn't have sex with them, but because
even though she didn't have sex with them, she had sex with somebody who had sex with them, who had sex with them. Okay. Obviously, you can only get pregnant from the person you're having sex with directly, but all these other infections can stick around and linger, and you don't have symptoms from them, and so you keep having more partners and you don't even know you're passing the infections, not to mention things like herpes that are kind of there all the time, or HPV that are there all the time that can get passed along. So, you know, you can use condoms and you can be half as likely to get a sexually transmitted infection, but wouldn't you think it'd be better to just like only do this instead of doing all this and using condoms?
Yep.
So, you know, do you want to get in a car with a drunk driver? No. You could wear a seatbelt, but you just don't want to get in a car with a drunk driver, right? So you got to think about condoms that same way. You guys are sitting there wearing masks, you're wiping down the tables, you're trying to do everything you can to prevent COVID, but like people in Niles have COVID, right? It still happens. So you got to think about sexually transmitted infections the same way. Lifelong consequences, whether it's pregnancy or whether it's an infection, and condoms are going to make those numbers less. So it's good to use condoms every single time you have sex. But the best thing is to have one partner who's only having sex with you, you know, ideally for your whole life. So the other thing that that tells me too is that if this is your story, if this is you, you get to decide where you're at right now. You get to decide where you go moving forward. Like just because you've had sex, just because you've had a couple of partners, doesn't mean it's just okay to go have 20 more, because every time is a starting over and is a new chance. Every time you have sex, you're exposing yourself to risks of these infections. So every time you choose not to have sex, you're choosing not to expose yourself to the risk of that infection. And it's a choice that's going to affect you not just today, but for years and years to come.